but I was afraid it would be so short. I didn't want to miss the town board meeting. I actually saw all these cars. That's right. I'm not on the agenda.
Violate all rules.
Hi, how are you?
No, I know you wouldn't say that. Don't mean you wouldn't think that. Further contact, no, but I still haven't seen. Yeah, okay. That's what it works.
This for you.
No, it ain't that. Not blood at all. Yeah.
Not Burlington.
Yeah, we couldn't be Berlin. The thing is, flood insurance. You brought it, the person paid that.
She's usually here like.
Yeah.
A little cold, a little heartless.
Oh, I thought.
That's it, I'm gone.
No, I didn't hear you.
The sewer was right, because of the flood. It wouldn't have happened. Quite a bit. No, pretty close. That's.
Hi. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, what happened?
This is reminiscent of the elementary school. I had to sit next to the teacher.
Mr. Miller, how are you?
Just very good, thank you. You gotta be politically correct once in a while, I guess.
Not arrested.
So, yeah, that's, but here. Oh, like those, yeah. I didn't even know. Yeah, like those. Yeah. left-hand corner of the fenced area. I thought that was closer to the fenced on the snow shed. I thought for some reason we moved just a little closer to the other I won't tell them. Oh, 550, okay, I didn't blow it up big enough to see the. Hey, gentlemen. Can we shrink that down and move this way, but keep this in the move it this way? Or are we going to be too tight for 10? About 70. Well, that's what I think. I have to look at our ordinance. Sometimes the ordinance will say, oh, yeah, he's going to have to jockey about it.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Waukesha Plan Commission meeting on July 13th, 2017, beginning at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting in order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Chairman Merrick,
Present.
Supervisor Fisher,
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Stigler,
Here.
Commissioner Flanagan,
Here.
and Commissioner White is absent.
And Madam Clerk, have you met the opens meeting law requirements?
Yes, we have.
And we can move on to 5, approval of the minutes from 6/8/2017. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to 6, discussion and possible action for an accessory building for Clint Albert at South 29 West 27340 Green Lane. Tax keys WAKT 1324990. And this is for a recommendation to the town board. Planner Rybarczyk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you tonight is Clint Albert. He was originally before the Plan Commission and Board back in May. He's looking to construct a 32 by 30 accessory building, so a detached garage. When he appeared back in May, the Plan Commission and the Board denied the application based on the exterior materials. It was the opinion of the Plan Commission and the Board that the steel exterior materials that he was proposing was not compatible with the principal residence and the neighborhood. So he has redrawn his accessory structure. It's now a wood framed accessory structure. So the exterior materials are going to be double 5-inch vinyl siding, which is going to be a desert sand color, aluminum soffit and fascia, and door trim, which is going to be a white color, and then raised paneled overhead doors, which are going to be a white color. In reviewing this, I feel that it's more compatible than what was presented back in May. But again, that's going to be the ultimate decision of the Plan Commission and the Board tonight. In reviewing the proposed accessory structure per our ordinances, for number 1 on page 2 of the staff report, it's not located in front of the principal residence. It's located to the side and to the rear. So he's compatible with item 1. He is within the tolerance of the aggregate total floor area of the accessory buildings on the property. He does have 2 existing 12-foot by 19-foot sheds in addition to the structure that he's looking to construct. However, he is still within compliance of the allowance because he is on more than 3 acres. He's actually on 4.28 acres. He does meet the number of allowed accessory buildings on the property. It's a total of 3. So again, with the 2 sheds and the structure that he's looking to build would be his 3rd. With regard to the compatibility, again, that'll be the determination of the Plan Commission and the board tonight. However, from staff's standpoint, I think he's kind of come a long way based on May and what he had presented. I think he listened to the comments of the Plan Commission and the board and addressed them. As far as setbacks, he does meet the 50-foot setback, and he is going to do an additional 2 feet from the side lot line to accommodate the additional 1 foot in height that he needs. Per the R1 district, the height is 15 feet. He's actually at 15 feet, 7 inches. So, he will be doing an additional 2 feet from the side yard lot line to accommodate that additional 7 inches. So with that, I did put together a recommendation on page 3, subject to 8 conditions if the Plan Commission so chooses to move forward tonight. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Albert, you are here this evening. Good evening. Questions for Planner Rybarczyk or the petitioner?
A question for the petitioner. You want to step up to the just microphone quickly? Thank you for the efforts that you have made. I agree with Planner Rybarczyk. I think what you're proposing tonight is much better than your first proposal. I just have one question. I think if memory serves me correct, I made a comment about the garage doors, that they would have some consistency and so forth through the last meeting. And I see on the drawing that I think that's largely been accomplished. The question that I would have, and I'm not sure who made the drawing or not, but we're looking at that kind of raised panel relief on the sections of those overhead doors. Is that actually represent a product that you can buy with that kind of configuration, or do you know, or who made the drawing? I'm just wondering whether it's really going to look like that.
It is. It's a CHI Carriage House International door. Geist installs all overhead doors. It's a 2-inch thick steel skin both sides, and it's an actual raised panel.
Okay, and that would have, I'm looking at the 16-foot door, that looks like it would have 8 raised panels in it, then left to right or horizontally, and the 9-footer would have 4 raised panels. That would be the configuration of the raised panels? Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions?
It matches his overhead door in the house. Very good.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve. I'm sorry, did I step on somebody?
Go ahead, Bob. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Any
I
discussion?
didn't even do the first.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And the board will be taking a look at that shortly. Next, lastly, is there a motion for adjournment?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. And we'll take a moment for the town board to get on up here and get rid of our overpaid plan commission members.
This is one for the record.
Such a short meeting, I knew they'd all be here tonight. Did you warn them about last month?
Chairman, you can handle this without a break tonight?
Huh? No, immediately
Of
following.
course not. It's 4 minutes. They're gonna say that. No way you can miss the next meeting.
You know, I said I actually brought my computer like I did the last time. I really,
Oh, yeah.
thank you.
That's a record for plan commission. It's because
I know, I say that, but I didn't want it to go to your head.
Make sure it wasn't. Right next to the microphone. Already. Anyone want to do this?
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town Board meeting of Town of Waukesha Town Board meeting on July 13, 2017, beginning at 6:40 PM. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with the roll call, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Merrick,
Present.
Supervisor Fisher,
Here.
Supervisor Wolf,
Here.
Supervisor Radke,
Here.
Supervisor Dur.
And Madam Clerk, have we met the open meetings law?
Yes, we have.
And we can begin with citizens' comments. Going once, going twice. And we can move on to 5, recommendations from the Plan Commission. Discussion and possible action on an accessory building for Clint Albert at South 29 West 27340 Green Lane. Tax keys WAKT 1324990. The recommendation from the Plan Commission was for approval. Planner Ray Barczyk? You're good? Comments for the planner and or the petitioner?
I would only ask that in addition to adopting, if you were mind to do so, the Plan Commission's recommendation, and since I couldn't talk before I could say this, please incorporate the planner's conditions into your approval.
Thank you.
Also move for approval with the inclusion, as Attorney Macy has rightly pointed out, the inclusion of the conditions of approval. So moved.
In a second.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Just a couple of points for the petitioner that I'd like to point out, to make sure that we're clear. This is going to be for personal property only? Okay. Because that's in the overview, it says the accessory building will be used for storage of cars and personal items on the subject property. And then under staff recommendation, item 6 is the petitioner shall record a deed restriction on the property in the form approved by the town attorney, giving notice that the use of the accessory building is for residential purpose only. So that would be no commercial equipment at all. Okay, very good.
Anything further? We've got a first and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. On to 6, minutes from June 23rd, 2017. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from June 23rd, 2017.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. On to new business. A, town campus building presentation by Adam Hurdle from Angus Young Associates, Inc. And then we would accept public comments concerning that project afterwards. Come on down. Thank you.
Is it coming up?
You don't want it to blow off.
I'll make it worse. Probably. I'll have to break it.
Yeah, I guess that
That
would
would
be
be
worse.
worse, yeah. Yep, I see it coming up. All right.
It's coming.
So if this comes up, so like you mentioned, my name is Adam Earl, I'm with Angus Young Associates.
Yeah.
You want to grab the mic?
You can slide that over there if you'd like, so you
I
can,
could stand here, that's fine.
otherwise it won't hit the recording.
Got it. Okay, so my name is Earl, I'm with Angus Young Associates, and I was tasked to help the building committee come up with a master plan effort for the town of Waukesha campus, which includes the town hall, the fire department, and the public works. And so we'll start with just a little bit of background on how we started the master planning effort.
You turn it on? On the side. Turn it on the side.
All right, gotta be smarter than the remote control. So a quick background is for our first kickoff meeting, the thing that we started with was talking about the project goals. And so for any master planning effort, you always want to get the feedback from the actual participants and the people who are going to be using it. And we got a lot of feedback during this meeting. And what we came out of that initial kickoff meeting, and I'll start with Public Works, was the number one priority for Public Works was a new salt storage building. The one that they currently have is not adequate, and so they identified that as the number one priority for the Public Works. Another goal was that all equipment, whether it's the vehicles, plows, trailers, all need to be, at the end of the day, the ideal scenario is that all that equipment is housed within a building. Nothing is left out in the yard. That just helps with longevity, helps maintaining the equipment. So that was identified as a goal. The next two are the security and the access, and they kind of go hand in hand in that currently with the waste drop-off area, there's public access that on the days that they're open on Wednesdays and Saturdays, the public is entering into the waste drop-off, driving through the Public Works yard, emptying their waste, and then coming back out. So it's definitely not an ideal situation when you're talking about security and there's Public Works vehicles maybe driving around at the same time, safety for the public as well as the security and just keeping the public, or I'm sorry, the Public Works materials and equipment safe from, you know, whatever kind of damage or anything that could happen. So those were identified as kind of the big Public Works goals that we wanted to try to address in this effort. As far as the fire department, we identified the living quarters, and that had a lot to do with providing the best service possible that the fire department wanted to for the community and the town residents. So living quarters, having the fire department on a generator in case of loss of power. Obviously, you want to be able to get the fire trucks out as quickly as possible. So a generator in case of power loss on the building, they can get those vehicles out and out into the community. We talked about raising the door height for the ladder truck. Currently, there is very minimal room. It's only a couple of inches they have that when they pull out of their current apparatus bay, it's a very tight squeeze at the top. And so one of those things is to try to alleviate that and make it a little bit easier when that truck is coming in and out of or backing into that particular space. We talked about extending apparatus bays for now and in the future. Vehicles are only getting bigger. And so the current apparatus bay that they have now, especially when you're talking about the fire engine, that space is quickly filling up with the size of those trucks. And so future down the road, as trucks get bigger, that space may not become adequate to house those new vehicles. And then finally, storage. Storage was a big thing, and just whether that's equipment, gear, just storage in general was another big thing for the fire department. To go along with the goals of the project, we discussed the space needs. So again, for Public Works, the space needs was a salt storage building, as well as the other big component being a new vehicle storage to house at least 5 winged plow trucks. And so currently, with the buildings that are currently on site, that is not possible. So that was one of the big tasks, was a new vehicle storage building for Public Works. And then to go along with the project goals of the fire department, day room, eating room, kitchen. We talked about the sleeping quarters, laundry area, 2 restrooms, and with showers, record storage, decontamination area, as long as a main entry for public access. Currently, as you all know, that access into the building, the entry point is shared, and they'd like to look at possibly splitting those into 2 separate areas to have a town hall access and a fire department access. So through our design process, we started this process roughly in the middle of May, I believe. And so to now, so roughly in 8 weeks, we had 5 committee meetings. For a while, we were meeting weekly. So as we really spent a lot of time, 5 meetings in those 8 weeks, we got a lot of work done. We ended up going through 11 public works concepts and 9 fire department concepts. So that just kind of goes to show the level of thought and the time that we took to make sure we explored all aspects of the design, make sure that, you know, when we made a decision, it was for the right reasons, and that we could go and we could confidently say we really explored all options, whether it was placing a building in a certain area, whether it was accommodating the public or the park area. We really took the time to explore a lot of options, and it shows, I think, in the amount of concepts that we went through. So from those meetings, we'll just quickly, so we have the existing site plan, and some of the major challenges, or just challenges in general of this site, is obviously, as you all know, is the topography. From the south side of the site to the north side, we drop approximately 10 feet. So anytime we're looking at placing a building, we have to be conscious of where it's going on the site, how we're going to get a level pad for the building, how we're cutting into the site, and just being conscious of those buildings and where they're going. The other part is currently there's a lot of, not a lot, but there are different buildings on site used for different areas. Some of them, they're still functional, but some of them may be less than ideal. We have for example, one of the buildings, you know, got a floor that slopes, and you guys make it work, but it was something that could be improved upon. So one of the directions early on was that necessarily not all the buildings on this site were sacred. So if there was a good reason to raise one of the existing buildings, that was an option. We did look at so the two metal buildings. The larger, it's roughly 2,000 square feet, and then the smaller building is about 1,000 square feet. And then the masonry brick veneer buildings, roughly 2,600 square feet. The masonry building was deemed to be in the best condition of the 3. So we kind of always treated that one as a building that if we were going to keep one, we would need a really good reason to have to take that building down, because it's still in relatively good condition compared to the other buildings. So when we looked at these, we always kind of looked at that building as maybe one that would stay, and the other ones we could kind of negotiate whether or not it made sense to take it down. And then kind of going back to the goals of the project, one of the other, or some of the other challenges when we talk about this existing site is, again, the public and private access when we talk about the waste drop-off area, and then just circulation in terms of today when you have baseball practice or baseball games and you have the community is coming and they're parking near the fire department, or they're driving around the site, and there's just a lot of circulation issues. So those are some of the things that we looked at when we looked at the existing site in order to meet the goals that we talked about earlier. So through our efforts, this is our proposed master plan. And again, this is the efforts of 11 concepts of public works and 9 fire department concepts. So we'll start with public works, and the public work, when we talk about public works, it's a little bit about each of the three major buildings, whether it's, I'm sorry, two major buildings and the waste drop off, they kind of influence the other. So when we talk about where does the waste drop off area go, it definitely has an impact on where the other two buildings go. Likewise, if we've made a decision that, you know, we're leaning towards the vehicle storage building based on the size of the building, we like it more on the north part of the site. It kind of then lends itself that, okay, the salt storage, because we need that space for the vehicle storage, maybe has to go on the south side of the site. So we did settle on the salt storage building on the south side of the site. And for a few reasons, this is a really good location for the salt storage. The first is on the south side of the site, I talked a little bit earlier about the topography. That's probably the most level area of the site. It also provides the most room in terms of when we talk about deliveries for salt. It's a larger vehicle that's bringing salt to the building. And then for loading the salt trucks at that time, we're talking about a front end loader and the plow truck. So there's some maneuverability that has to happen when we're talking about the salt storage. So it lended itself to that part of the site as an ideal spot because it is relatively flat compared to the south side of the site. The second reason is when we talk about construction and phasing of the project, like I mentioned earlier, the salt storage was identified as kind of the number one priority for Public Works. So if that building was going to be the first kind of building that was to be constructed, that part of the site is relatively building free. And so you could technically build that building first and keep the rest of the Public Works operations going and not have to interrupt any of that current operations. So whereas if we were going to build that building first because it's the top priority and we picked this northern part of the site, there would have to be some juggling of space and where do buildings or equipment go in the meantime while that building is being constructed. And then lastly, and this is something that we talked a lot about, was being, I'll call it a friendly neighbor. On a day like today, when you've got a lot of people coming to this part of the southern part of the site for baseball, that part of the behind the existing building fits in with the landscape and doesn't necessarily intrude on kind of the access and the view and the enjoyment of the ballpark. We had options where it wasn't necessarily behind that existing building. We had it out to the north, and through a lot of discussion, we felt that it best to blend it in with an existing building and kind of tuck it in behind that existing building, so not to impact what I can tell and always see whenever I'm here is a pretty busy time in the evenings for baseball. So those are some reasons. So when we talk about putting the salt storage shed there, and then we look at the vehicle storage building, the north part of the site lended itself nicely to that part of the site, because even though, as I talked about, yes, it is the higher part and it is a larger slope, using the structural parts of the building, the inherent concrete foundation walls and precast possibly of the structure, we can cut that into the side of that slope. It's not necessarily a hill, but cut it into the slope of the building, push the building and maximize the amount of space we have on the site by pushing it all the way up against the setback and basically having an inherent retaining wall with the structure of the building, which plays nicely into the waste drop-off. So obviously, if we're going to propose that the vehicle storage building is going where the waste drop-off currently is, we have to figure out how that access and that's working. And it works out nicely because we can use the existing grade, the existing high point of the site. I know you're all familiar with how the waste drop-off works, but currently residents are driving kind of on an incline. They're above the bins. They're taking their waste and their brush and they're throwing it down into the bins. So we almost needed a situation where we needed some kind of a higher topography to deal with if we were going to move the waste drop-off area. So that part of the site, if we were going to kind of dig the building into the north part of the site and allow residents to, at the waste drop-off area, kind of use that natural grade and set those bins down low at the same floor elevation as the vehicle storage, it just lended itself to really nicely kind of work out where without having to, recut the site anymore to create that separation of height. It just used the natural landscape to kind of accomplish that, and it works out rather nicely. We're able to, with pushing the building up against the setback line, we're able to create a secure yard area for the public works. So they have the ability, it will be gated and fenced in. So the waste drop-off area will be separate from the vehicle storage area. Residents will have their own path to access the waste drop-off, and then the public works personnel have their own separate access into the yard, into their vehicle storage building. And then finally, for the public works, I did mention that when we discussed the possibility of raising an existing building, it was also tasked that if that happens, we needed to make sure we accommodate for that space. So the vehicle storage building that we're showing does accommodate the 5 wing plow trucks, which is one of the goals. But it's roughly about a 10,700 square foot building. And I mentioned the existing larger building is about 2,000 and the smaller building up front is about 1,000. So currently you're about 3,000 square feet of storage. If we just kind of look at the trucks and the wing plow trucks are approximately half of that square footage, and you've got about 5,200 square feet left, you're accommodating what you currently have for storage. But then you also have the ability of 2,000 square feet roughly for future. So we're maximizing by combining them into one building, we're maximizing the amount of storage space that we can have. So that's kind of the public works aspect. For the fire department, we did look at a few options in terms of whether we locate some of the new features that I discussed, like the kitchen and the sleeping quarters. Possibly putting them inside the existing building and maybe reconfiguring some space, possibly adding on new apparatus space. But at the end of the day, as we looked at it more and more, it seemed like a natural fit to having it in on the east side of the existing apparatus bay. And so, and initially we looked at a few options. We looked at whether it's a single story, whether it's a slightly raised pad with maybe some crawl space underneath. But again, after a few iterations, we came up with a 2-story option. And the way that we're accomplishing that is, and then we're not talking about using possibly any elevators or anything. We would have internal stairs, but possibly using one of the living quarters on the first floor for AD access, and then putting the rest of the living quarters on that second floor, and kind of actually one of the things is that we learned very quickly that there's a setback line that we had to adhere to. So there's a 50-foot setback line off. So you can kind of see that in the drawing. So we had to kind of adhere to that, and that quickly kind of defined the amount of space that we had. So it lent itself kind of naturally to the 2-story building. But as we went through it, we have the sleeping quarters up on the second floor, as well as the kitchen, dining, and day room on the first floor, which have direct access and is on the same floor plane as the existing apparatus bay. And then we have some enlarged plans of the fire department, which shows, again, on the first floor we have dining, kitchen, and day room. We have some workspace, and then on this first floor is where we have the storage space. That was one of the main goals for the fire department. So about half that first floor is all storage space, which will really accommodate, I think, what their needs are. And then on the second floor is, like I said, is the sleeping quarters and some restrooms with showers, which again was part of the space needs that were identified earlier. And then finally, the public works plans, kind of self-explanatory. We kind of went through that. It's about 10,700 square feet, can accommodate or house 5 winged plow trucks, and a plan of the salt storage shed. Then finally, we went through and did some budget estimates. The first one is the salt storage, and the reason for the asterisks on the salt storage is because there's really there's two different kinds of buildings, 4 options overall. We had always talked about a 500-ton or 1,000-ton salt storage shed. Obviously, the 1,000-ton is a bigger footprint, so that space was, or where that building could be located was a little bit more restricted compared to the 500-ton. We are showing approximately about a 550-ton on those site plans that we just saw earlier. So the reason for the larger range of the salt storage shed accommodates the 2 different types, which is one, a wood structure building, and the other is a tension fabric structure on cast in place concrete walls. So the low range is the 500-ton wood salt structure, and then the high range is the 1,000-ton fabric tension covered building. And then the 1,000-ton wood and the 500 fabric are in between there. So the fire department estimate, we're talking roughly 3,400 square feet on the first floor and about 1,900 square feet on the second floor. The estimate there was about $1 million. And then the public works, as I mentioned, about 10,700 square feet of space, about 1.2 million for a total project budget of about 2.4 million.
What were the square footage estimates on the fire department?
The fire department, so it was 3,400 for the first floor, and that includes, it's about 2,600 square feet for the living quarters, and then about 700 square feet for the bay extension, which I forgot to mention is, I don't know if this has a, but right here, so this is the addition. This is the addition that houses the meeting area, and then we've got the bay extension that was part of the program, and then 1,900 on the second floor.
Thank you. Where's the pole in the fire department that they slide down?
Yeah.
It's right by the Dalmatian.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and actually, one of the other things too, I maybe kind of quickly went through the fire department at the end there, but we did meet the goal of being able to provide a separate access to separate the front entry from the town hall by kind of repurposing one of the offices and providing a new front entry system. So that would be a perfect place for the pole, would be right in the front entry.
Why was there a need for a separate entrance? We've got 2 entrances now to the fire department, one in back and one through town hall. Why a separate one? And maybe that's better directed to the chief.
Biggest concern is where they have to start locking down our facilities, our facilities, safety, security, the fire department, and all the other unfortunate things that are going on in society today. Homeland Security wants us to lock down.
Can't you just lock that door that leads in now? Leads into the fire department from the front entrance town hall? Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, Adam, this new price you've got now includes that bayout that
Yes.
we talked about at the last meeting?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it also, so I know that number differs a little bit from our last meeting, and that does include the extended bay that we talked about, as well as the generator hookup. I know that was something that we had talked about, and that was a goal, as well as we had mentioned providing an allowance for furnishings. So that's how we went from the number, I think, that you had seen, it was around 800,000. You include those 3 items, and that's how it got to that.
Okay, so
that number.
furnishings are included now
Yes,
too?
yes.
Or
Yep, there's an allowance.
an allowance?
Correct, yes.
What do you envision the generator powering?
So we didn't directly talk about that exactly, but one of the main things obviously would be the overhead doors. I don't know if the chief has maybe some thoughts about exactly what it was. But we discussed, or there was a study that had been previously done that was about a 50 kW generator. And the focus or the goal for the fire department was obviously for the overhead doors first and foremost. And then I don't know if there's some additional.
Anything in the town hall or just fire department?
There was some in the town halls too, as well, yes.
Questions?
I've got several comments. Some process comments, just first to start and thank Adam and your firm Angus. I think you've done a commendable job with this. I'm not sure what your expectation was beginning the process 6 weeks ago. I'm sure all the people on the committee maybe had a little bit different expectations. I'll just tell you from my individual point of view, you fulfilled those expectations by looking at, as you well mentioned, many different options, trying to help us identify what our needs and priorities are. So thank you for that. You did a commendable job. And I think your task is largely completed for this part and wrapping up tonight. So great job. I think, and you've done a good job in your presentation, I think we need to emphasize for everybody in the room or outside of the room that these are preliminary or conceptual drawings only. One can reasonably expect if we move forward that there are going to be a lot of ahead. There's going to be a lot of changes, modifications, revisions, such as the nature of the process. So they're very preliminary, and that's appropriate at this point in time. Other process things, I don't think, and I know we've had a little discussion, I may not be on the same page with everybody, but we're sitting here at mid-July. I think it's realistic that we're doing any significant amount of brick and mortar this year, notwithstanding that we actually have $1,200,000, I believe, in our capital budget for this year. I think the way forward is decision-making, discussion. It's going to take time for whether it's your firm or someone else, whoever builds this on paper, to bid it. Even the construction industry and the bidding and construction climate up there, people are gorged with work at this time of year. So I think that's realistic. My personal vision, and this is just kind of loose, but I think we're probably looking at least 6 weeks of discussion. And I think it's on our agenda, we're going to be talking about the budgeting process for our capital budget and operating budget going into next year. There's certainly going to be things to say about that. And I'll make another bit of a comment about finances in a minute. Regarding the specific plans, the fire department component, I think the solution to go with new construction to the east side of the building up to the setback line, 2 stories, I think is the appropriate way to go. Again, I think there's some tweaking that can be done with that, as there always can be, to improve some of that. But I think in terms of a concept or preliminary drawings, I think that's the right solution. And I don't think we need to discuss that further tonight, other than to recognize I think it's a good step in the right direction. In the public works, we had a lot of discussion. I personally believe that the raising of the bill you identified for a long-term solution is necessary. I fully support the construction of a single new building for public works purposes. I know we looked at options of doing that other ways. I think that's the most cost efficient. I think it will be the most efficient in terms of usage and operation for the town. I think the orientation and siting, parking it back into the hill is absolutely the way to go. And these are a bit of details. I questioning in my own mind whether or not we need 20-foot wide overhead doors. That's a detailed discussion. If we could do it, I'd like to see the west end of it moved a bit further east so it doesn't impinge quite so much towards the foul line for the baseball field. I think that's a bit of an aside. I think that baseball field is a real asset to the town of Waukesha. I mean, when I arrive tonight, the bad news is we've got 2 cars parked out half in the ditch on the shoulder of the road, which is a bad thing. But on the other hand, it's a good thing, because I think it's reflective of the fact that that facility is being put to use and to a good and useful purpose for a lot of people. The need to maintain the baseball field and access to it, to me, I think that's kind of sacred territory. I'm willing to entertain discussion otherwise, but I think that's important. We had an awful lot of discussion, as you and others well know about, the yard waste dump or drop-off site or whatever you want to call it. If we were to master plan this facility from the get-go, it wouldn't look like what it's going to be because we're working around existing conditions and constraints. We talked a lot about public and private access and security. I think the preliminary drawing you presented, I think, is probably the best solution for that yard waste facility if we're going to keep it in operation and keep it on this site and keep it in close proximity to the rest of the buildings. For my part, I think part of the discussion going forward needs to look at all possibilities with that, including, I recognize and accept it's a valuable service to provide to town residents. I think we owe it to ourselves at this point in time to look at whether that service could be delivered in a different way, such as a pickup thing or contracted service. We don't have the information for that tonight. I don't think we should dismiss the possibility that yard waste drop-off site might be better placed someplace else on this larger site or someplace off-site. So for me, those are all questions in the air. The salt shed, I'm not enthused, and I know we really pushed and pulled around on that thing. I'm not enthused with several things about it. I'm not enthused with the location that's in the proposal at this point in time for several reasons, even though we're trying to tuck it behind the existing Public Works building. Just the visibility of it. I mean, yesterday, even the horrendous rainfall we had, there are drainage issues or considerations. I mean, to move surface water away from that. The DNR, we are on a waiver from the DNR with our small salt storage facility at this point in time because we're closer than 250 feet to our existing private well. That would have to be put in play again and get their approval. And again, real concerns if you look at the gable roof over that existing Public Works building and the fact that the topography goes that way, the baseball field and everything. I think those are issues that are problematic. I don't, and I understand and respect we may have differences of opinion. For me, I don't think if we're going to go to the effort to do it, I don't think 550 tons is what I would consider to be ideal. We have had in years past used up to 2,000 tons of salt when we've had some bad and nasty winters. The last couple of years, it's not been nearly that much. I would be more inclined, regardless of where it's located, to be looking at something that would accommodate not less than 1,000 tons of salt. I would even entertain the discussion up to 2,000 tons. Two reasons for that being that would provide us a lot more flexibility for purchasing. And the other thing is, not the last couple of years, but some 3 years ago or something, there were shortage issues and people were paying huge and premium prices for salt. So I think my mind is open on that, but I think we owe ourselves a whole lot more discussion on that. The salt shed for me is the same issue as the yard storage or the yard drop-off waste site. I think we would be remiss if we didn't look at placing it other places on this site or off premises. Last couple of things wrapping up. It's not for discussion in detail tonight, but the way forward, we're going to be looking at financing this thing. As I mentioned, we've got $1,200,000 in the capital budget for this year. That's probably not going to be spent for this year. You've done a wonderful job of spending twice what we set aside, right? And we walked into that realistically. That's not any particular surprise. I don't think for some of us, but I mean, we either have to expand our ability to pay or reduce our wish list. I mean, such is the reality of what it is. I'm not likely going forward to support borrowing. I mean, I'll listen to that discussion. I'm not likely to do that. I mean, options before us are phasing, a deferral. I suspect we're going to discuss those things when we get into budgeting here and talking about a capital budget going forward and how we go about doing that. So that's to be deferred for another day. So that's a rather lengthy thing. Those are my thoughts. Again, compliments to you because I think you've hit us in the right direction. A lot more discussion to come, but you've given us a great place to start. So thank you.
Thank you.
Comments, questions, anybody else? Any questions from anybody in the audience? Come on up.
The only comment I have.
Come on up to the microphone, Mary, so everybody can hear you.
This sounds like a very good idea, but I'm just wondering what will happen at voting season? Where are people going to be able to get in to vote when we use the fire department area right now? That's the only question I have.
Great question. Madam Clerk?
I don't see any changes at all. So we'll use it the exact same way we use it now.
Because you have a new building right in front.
But the back door will still be able to be open.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea and everything. Just don't want to see the board nickel and dime things and cut things out that should have been in there. And then later on, oh, I wish we would have done it. It's going to cost a lot more to do it. So spend the money now, get what the town needs, what we want. It's going to last for a long time. And then that's going to be it. Because I've seen that happen too many times. Thank you.
One other question, Adam. Does your price include somebody to do the working drawings and to run the project? Is that included in your amount?
AE fees are included, yes,
Okay.
in all of those, yes.
Okay.
And then I will also mention, since financing was brought up, is that I do have on this, so this is for 2017 numbers. Anything that go on to subsequent years, we usually do apply some percentage of an escalation from year to year. Usually we just kind of use a generic number of about 3%, but just to be known that this is for 2017.
Can I follow up with a question? And I think the committee stuff, we had this discussion a little bit, so this is I'm kind of baiting you with a question, and I'll admit to that up front. But in terms of the town getting bang for their buck and recognition of what your perception might be, what the bidding climate is and availability of work and resources to do it and everything, what would be in the town's best interest in terms of timing, seasonal timing, or whatever, or what or not, to try to put a project like this to bid and build it?
Typically, you're correct. Now is everyone's very busy. To get the best pricing and to kind of maximize your dollar, January is always a good time. Because at that time, contractors are looking for and deciding on where their workforce will be, and they can kind of plan for the year. And then also, if you do it January, earlier in the year, that gives you time to receive numbers, go through the contract and negotiation portion, and then kind of, so to speak, hit the ground running when the ground thaws and start right away in April.
Then just a follow-up question, if I might. You've had the pleasure of working with the town of Waukesha for 6 weeks, and you know how quickly we can make decisions and stick to them, wink, wink, right? But educate us a bit on how long it would take, just assuming we decided to retain your firm, which is not a given, or somebody else, but how long would it take an architectural engineering firm working with the town of Waukesha to build this on paper with all the details, the buttons, whistles, and mirrors, so we'd have plans and specifications that we would go to public bid? What's a reasonable amount of time to complete all of that with the necessary reviews and, yes, a measure of indecision along the way?
Are we talking the entire Public Works and Fire Department, or Fire Department?
For the sake of discussion,
the whole thing? Well, I would say that it probably does help that it is all at once. It's like when you're talking about going out for bid, you're always better off if you can have the contractor mobilized once. I would say the same thing here when we're talking about our team. It does help that you would all be working on the same project at the same time. So if I had to guess, so Public Works and the Fire Department, we'd probably looking at, if we started, I would say 3 to 4 months probably. And that would include, if we were to start reasonably from where we are now, schematic design is 90% of the way there. We didn't talk much about elevation. So typically our schematic design would include site plan, floor plan, and elevations. We didn't do a lot of elevations, but relatively speaking, we've started the schematic design process. So assuming we can kick off relatively kind of design development-ish, and go through construction documents, I think that time frame is probably 3 to 4 months is a fair assessment of time.
So just quick summary, translation of that. If we're looking to build something brick and mortar next year, and we're looking to bid after the first of the year, we would need to resume the process of building this on paper in September, 1st of October, thereabouts.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I just want to say it was a pleasure working with all of you. I did have a good time, and there's, you say that working with the town, it was a great experience, and I do appreciate the opportunity. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Let's move on to B, acceptance of the 2016 firefighters grant program award of $203,048 for the purchase of 26 self-contained breathing apparatus units with required town contribution of $10,152. Is there a motion to accept the grant?
I'll make a motion to accept the grant.
And a second?
I'll second.
Could we just ask Chief if he's here tonight, just to, real quickly for us and everybody else, just give us the highlights of what this is all about, please?
Back at budget time, we put together our capital budget. We had in there a program to replace our breathing apparatus, all of our SCBAs and our fill compressor. That part of the capital budget was pushed off from 2017 to a future year. We applied for a FEMA grant, a firefighter assistant grant for the breathing apparatus. 2 weeks ago, Friday, we were notified that we were awarded that grant. We're going to replace all of our breathing apparatus, 26 units of breathing apparatus, each with two bottles, one for the unit, a spare bottle for each pack, a face piece for each pack, and a new fill compressor system. The 20348 is the federal government share of money that we receive. We receive that money as we pay the bills. They pay our bills for us. The $10,152 is the portion that the town pays. It's our 5% share of the grant. It's a shared grant, 5% share.
What is the timing on the receipt and expenditure of money and the acquisition of the equipment and everything? Is that to happen yet this year?
We have up to 1 year to complete the project. We anticipate it will be easily finished before the end of this year. We're in the process now of evaluating equipment and selecting the products and getting price quotes that we need to submit.
Thank you. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Really a nice help to our capital budget.
Agreed. On to C, capital fund budget amendment for the purchase of the self-contained breathing apparatus in the amount of $213,048. Is there a motion?
I guess I just want to double back. So we have in understanding, and we've got a worksheet in front of us, but we are, I guess I'd like to just have that explained a little bit so it's clear with everybody what it is we're really doing with the movement of the money and voting on, please.
Sure. What do you want to explain?
Kathy knows what we want to.
Okay, so what I did was, we are going to accept the grant, or you've accepted the grant. When the money comes in, we're going to put that into miscellaneous revenue in the capital fund. Then we are going to also set aside, with this budget amendment, the $10,152 from fund balance in the capital project fund to put forth our matching funds required by the grant. Then your budget amendment in front of you gives you the expense of $213,200 for the purchase, so the chief can go out and purchase that 26 self-contained breathing apparatus.
I guess my question is a bit, and maybe even Attorney Macy can help us through that. We don't have the finance guy here tonight, but we're talking about a budget amendment for $213,048. So we're talking about that as an expenditure, but the budget amendment doesn't acknowledge the income against it. That's maybe an awkwardly worded question, but I'm just not seeing it clearly. We're doing a budget amendment is the budget amendment to expend an additional $213,048, or is it to expend $10,100?
The budget amendment is to accept the revenue that we're going to bring in of the $203,048. Then to set aside the fund balance, apply some fund balance, the $10,152, which would reduce our fund balance in the that we have set aside right now in the 400 or in the capital project fund for that matching. Then we're going to spend the $213,200.
So what would a properly worded motion for this budget amendment be then?
Counselor?
Well, first I have a question because I don't have the whole budget in front of me. You have a section of your approved budget called capital fund budget. Some communities
Yes.
do and some communities.
We have a capital fund, 400 capital fund, and it's a budget all by itself, correct? And that is approved.
When we adopt the budget.
When we adopt the budget, we adopt the general budget, and then we adopt the capital budget as well.
Many communities, many are doing it now, but most did not.
Right.
They would transfer the capital fund budget. You guys worked on this long time for the last couple of years. So I just have to make sure I understand the basics. So the motion would be to, you've accepted the grant, is to place the grant program award as revenue in the capital fund budget. That's the first thing. That's what Kathy just said. To place the revenue to, and Kathy, is the 10,000 already in the capital fund budget?
That's correct. It's in fund balance right now.
It's not in the
It's not
budget,
fund
it's in the fund balance.
Yeah, no, it is not. That's why we were doing a budget amendment to
So, and
use
then
fund
the second
balance.
step would be to transfer 10,000, whatever the number is, from the fund balance to the capital fund budget revenue. And then to create an expense line in the capital fund budget expense area to expend the 213,048.
Which is what resolution 2017-04 does for you.
Okay, but I would suggest that whoever made the motion, if that's acceptable, it be put just exactly into the terms that Attorney Macy presented. I think that's clear as to what it is.
Well, isn't that what resolution 2017-04 says? That's how I read it.
Well, but who made the motion and what was the motion?
Nobody
There was
made a
no
motion
motion
yet.
yet.
Oh, okay, I thought there was. Well, then the motion would be simply to accept that resolution as it's printed.
Are you making that motion?
I will.
In a second.
I'll second that.
Go ahead. I got Jim.
Jim, yeah.
All right, I'll second. How long do you take?
And if I may, the only thing, Kathy, I'd have to ask you to
Mhm.
change is what the total budget change is really 213,200. I'm a little confused by
Okay.
what you mean by the total budget change. The total,
Cash has changed. The total cash in
used
the,
another surplus, is that the? where
That's
you
right.
keep your money in?
Mhm.
That's a lot of people call it different, surplus.
Right. It's
You
our
know,
fund
it's a
balance.
change in the surplus of $1,152.
Right.
But the actual budget we want to show is I
So-
would strike the total budget change line. And then
Okay.
I think it is, as one of the supervisors stated, exactly what I said. We're showing revenue of the grant, we're showing 10,000, coming from surplus, and then the expense of the 213,200.
Just one point of clarification, because I didn't look at it either. Kathy or Chief might know, we were not proposing to, is it true that we were not proposing to expend any money in the 2017 capital budget for breathing apparatus? Is that true or not?
That's correct. It's in the 2018 budget.
Okay, so we
Or
weren't proposing to
proposed.
spend anything, so we're getting the 200,000 plus, we're putting 10 plus of ours against it and spending the total. Attorney Macy, that's still consistent with what
Yes,
you have
because that's
recommended.
just, that's your long-range plan, that's your capital
Understood.
fund plan. You will obviously be amending that,
Sure,
at some time in the future, because that 2018 number will be
Yep.
out this year, hopefully.
Absolutely.
grant
August.
will come in. But I think she's got it laid out right. I just think it might be confusing to the public to say the total budget change. The total budget change is those three above noted items. in my
Okay.
opinion.
I'll take
Fair
out that line. If, do we need approval for the friendly amendment from the two?
Supervisor Fisher?
I'm lost. Did I make a motion along the way? I like what
You
Attorney
did.
Macy said. Sure.
You did.
That's it.
And Supervisor Radke?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Just need a
Opposed?
roll call.
I'm sorry, budget amendment, roll
Yes,
call.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Supervisor Durr,
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher,
Aye.
Chairman Merrick,
Aye.
Supervisor Radke,
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf.
Aye. Motion carries. On to D, Timothy McNulty hearing concerning fees charged for some ditch work. And is Mr. McNulty here this evening? Then unless somebody wants to take some action on it, I think we can move on.
Just for clarification, he's the one who asked to be on the agenda. We did not. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
And they double checked. For the last 2 weeks, they've called and double checked to make sure they
On to E, operator's license for Tally's Tap and Eatery for Victoria Tallinger. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we award an operator's license for Tally's Tap and Eatery to Victoria Tallinger.
And a
Second
second.
that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 8, closed session. You are hereby notified that the town board of the town of Waukesha will convene and may, upon motion duly made and seconded and acted upon by roll call vote as required under Wisconsin Stats 1985 sub 1 sub G, go into closed session during the course of the meeting. Town board members may attend the closed session. The purpose of the closed session will be as follows. Confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation, which it is or is likely to be involved as authorized under 1985 sub 1 sub G, specifically to confer with legal counsel on possible court action for the following: Greenman, Wingert, Serwin, and Meta. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Fisher,
Aye.
Supervisor Durr,
Aye.
Chairman Merrick,
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf,
Aye.
Supervisor Radke.
Aye.
We are in closed session. We shall return as soon as possible.
So I assume we're bidding this out under the regular public bidding laws and we're not doing anything.
You're so fine.
Well, maybe, but I just,
Because we're gonna have them be able to view any of the residents.
Okay, sure. All right.
Thank you.
where's the attorney? I figured you'd just start without me.
Actually, we're done.
Great, okay.
It's your turn, right? It's gonna be there.
I think that would be awesome. And somebody takes longer than the other person, sometimes they'll go around. Everybody works together.
Like, we talked a lot about. Forget about where that snow blower goes.
They asked for comments, so. Anyways, okay, well, thanks, we appreciate it, absolutely. Whenever, all those two things out there.
It's a bummer. It's a tough thing you have to do.
Yeah, I brush it out all the time. My chair, it turns back to a pumpkin at 8. I don't even make it through the new thing. Oh, okay. I try to make it one. That's great.
Sure, the guys just stand there, and the thing is, by the time they walk it over and set it. Actually, there's a.
real long. Yeah, but the one guy, who's gonna be looking at the so we already had. It's early, but I haven't started to go to it. So I just spaced them out. And then we work out. And then we only gave us one in the building to work with. Yeah. So that we, my frame and others, we just kind of work. Consistent. So nothing in that one.
No, they're.
We'll figure it out, right? I mean, anything over, even if we transported them, like, we can't let it on. Okay. A lot of times, plus a 65. That was one of our red cards. Well, there was zip room a lot too. I would transfer it, I still know. Our MBCI is big. A lot of. Yeah. But I mean, I still won't count, you know, that's always rather. Small work. I still have my fingers in my chair. I know some.
Usually. When they all West High School. Oh, really?
Good luck. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. We'll see what happens. All right, see ya. Take care. I'm not gonna wait for him. I don't know what they're talking about.
your tables are here. So it's, the attorney is Nash, but we, for your property,
Yeah.
it's just Nash. We,
It is 8:50 and we are back in open session. We are on accounts payable, authorization and payment of the bills in the amount of $11,161.24 to
24 cents.
to Rupert Melke. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to pay Rook and Milky in that amount.
And a second? And Madam Clerk, a roll call vote, please.
Chairman Merrick,
Yes.
Supervisor Durr,
Aye.
Supervisor Radke,
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf,
Aye.
and Supervisor Fisher.
Abstain.
Motion carries. On to authorization for the balance of the bills of $107,450.20. Is there a motion?
Move to pay in that amount.
And a second?
I'll second.
Chairman
Yeah.
Merrick,
Yes.
Supervisor Durr,
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher,
Aye.
Supervisor Radke,
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf.
Aye. Motion carries and a motion for adjournment,
I'll
please.
make the motion we adjourn.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.